Hey, Tony.
Hey, Jordan. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah. I'm calling in. I've got the master set up here, and I'm calling you. So we've been fighting through some technical stuff just before starting the show. So we've kind of got our fingers crossed that all this goes well tonight, because like all things, they break about 3 minutes before you're supposed to go live. Anyway, so Tony, how you been, man? What's up?
I'm good. I got involved with a very quick turnaround, interesting project at work. I'll talk about in just a little bit. And I'm still facing the nightmare that is the home network makeover.
Still.
Still. So actually last night I made a good progress, good step forward. And but yeah, I never really had enterprise gear at my house. I was never sort of a fan of like going out and buying the best things for your house. I know a lot of people take a lot of pride in their home setups. And I take a lot of pride in mine, but not because it's the nicest or most pristine or has the best equipment in it. I take pride in it because I was able to reclaim and recycle some of the cheapest equipment out there and do incredible things like run large EVE-NG topologies, all kinds of different VPNs. And I get tons of network visibility because of how I structured my home network. And so I've always steered away from enterprise gear, but like now finally I'm like, you know what? Once I expanded the access points across my house, now I have 3 access points. I had 1 for 3 years. So now I got 3 total, right? And they're spread out across the house. So now I'm like at this point where I'm like, maybe it's time you start introducing some gear, And so I went out and bought some Juniper stuff. And, I think everyone sort of caught that story before. The damn switch is just too loud. It is way too loud. In my basement, I have a little theater set up. I don't have like nice theater seating or anything, but I have a projector and like a 12-foot screen. Maybe it's a 10-foot, 120 inches, so 10-foot screen and a projector. And so when we go down there to watch movies, I have to have my little network closet that's down there has to be dead silent. And now I got a screaming switch in there. So I tried to go the route of a lot of people are getting these Noctua fans and upgrading their switches with Noctua fans because they're super quiet. They're like rubber mounts. There's nothing but nice things to say about them. They run really great. And they just don't make the models that are needed to swap out the fans for that switch. So I'm at a loss. So what I ended up doing was going back on eBay and picking up 2 Juniper EX2300Cs. That's the compact ones. That's the passive cooled, no moving parts, no fans, no nothing. And honestly, I've wanted these switches for years, but I've always had that problem of like not spending a ton of money on your home gear and not buying enterprise gear and bringing it home. And like I said, I was just sort of up against a wall. I made the decision that like, you know what, I'm going to commit to this Juniper thing. I'm going to buy a Juniper switch. I use them occasionally at work. And so I was like, let's go for it. And so when I bought them off eBay, like most things on eBay, it had an old operating system on it. I don't know about the configs or anything. So I did the whole wipe and reset, factory reset. And then I went to upgrade the image, and upgrading the image has taken about a week and a half.
Oh my word.
I just got them upgraded last night because of lots of help from our awesome networking Twitter family, Jeff Fry.
Jeff Fry.
Chris Schultz. Yeah. They told me he recommended a couple of different ways, but ultimately what ended up being my method was this USB media install method, which I think he called it the oh crap method.
Sure.
It's like when no remote upgrade is possible. You have to walk in there with a bootable USB drive, and you don't install the packages or the operating system from the operating system. You're not like bringing in new patches or new versions of services that are running. Instead, you install this from the bootloader. So before the operating system even starts. And basically it creates the baseline for the switch. And so that's what I did. I created a baseline on a semi-modern a version of the OS, one of the TAC recommended, JTAC recommended versions. So it has been a nightmare, dude. But but like everything, we talked earlier in the week, and like everything, this has been a nightmare, and I've absolutely hated it. And I wanted to ditch all of my efforts because it was hard, right? Because it was hard and it was frustrating. But when you get through things that are hard, and when you get through the frustrations, it's when you've learned the most. And so I've learned a great deal about the basics of just upgrading these things and all the different ways to upgrade them and all the different images that are available out there to do the upgrades. There's like a bunch of different images depending on which method you're going to do. So dude, this has had my full attention here at house. So when you ask me like what I've been up to here at home, that little project, and there's a lot to do after this. This is just the phase. I can't move on to the stuff afterwards until this phase is done. So we're almost there, wrapping up the Switch phase. So now I just got to swap out the Screamer for the silent ones. And, I have to have an approved maintenance window with my wife and my kids.
We talked about this last time, right? Yeah. About your maintenance windows at home. Yeah, absolutely.
So once that's done, then I can move on to my visibility projects and reincorporating that in a more robust way than I was doing before. And I hope to be able to demo some of that here on stream. It'll be very cool in the next couple of weeks coming up.
That's cool. Very, very cool.
What are you doing, Jordan? Tell me about what you have going on.
Let's see. Kevin Myers says OSPF says hello. Kevin's actually able to join us for one of these. It's been a while. He's missed the past couple. So hey, Kevin, it's good to see you, man.
I'm surprised he's not up on like a late night cutover. He said he was up at like 2 to 4 in the morning or something last night, I think. Or
I'm actually recording a show with Kevin this weekend. On Saturday, and I think he's doing that tomorrow because it was the first date I threw out was Thursday night, and he's like, "Yeah, not going to work anyway." So what have I been up to? Had a nice break, right, for Thanksgiving. Had a few days off, and then kind of got back into the work routine, and then for home. Well, I mean, you can see I don't have my background behind me now. That's because I have a fancy new green screen set up. So. That's one of the many things that can fail tonight. We'll see how that goes. It's working well so far. It's something I wanted to do for a while, but I ended up picking up the Elgato MT, which is the one that pulls down very much like the overhead projector screens of the past do. Like it hangs from my ceiling. I can just pull a lever on it, so it gets out of the way. It's actually kind of nice. But yeah, it's that's new for here, and then just been working on getting some of this stream stuff put together. So and lots of astronomy stuff. I unfortunately earlier this week talked Tony's ear off on some of the astrophotography stuff that I'm into. I just bought a bunch of new gear. So that's exciting. Now I get to wait for it to show up and then wait for the absolute required 2 weeks of clouds every time you get new gear. And can't do anything with it. So that's what I have going on my end. You brought up Jeff Fry though, which is really interesting. I don't know if you know this or not, but Jeff lives about like a 15-minute, 20-minute drive from me here in and around Allentown, Pennsylvania, and so Jeff is actually one I would even call it the primary catalyst for me to get involved with social media, which ended up being such a big catalyst for change in my career. And so it's interesting that you bring him up because it's actually one of the things we want to talk about tonight, right? It was kind of like we were talking in the Network Collective Slack. I was trolling for topic ideas for the show, just in general. I'd like to ask around because obviously I can get involved in the stuff that I do. And there are periods of time on the show where you can tell I get a bit tunnel visioned on topics only because those are the things that I've been working in.
Naturally. So, me too. Yeah. It's only what I see,
Exactly. And so I ask around, and also we're getting close to like, I've only got a few more slots for the rest of the year. And so I was just kind of asking around, seeing if there was anything that was interesting that we could put together. And one of the guys in the Slack came through and was like, I'd really like to talk about, like really kind of about the idea it's both personal brand building, but also personal network building. And like how to do that. And in the context under which you brought it up, and I thought it was interesting, was around COVID, but it wasn't really fully around COVID. So for some of us who are in this industry and we go and we have the opportunity to go to conferences or different types of events, like we're really feeling like we're missing out right now. Because of the fact that, all those in-person events just haven't happened. And so I haven't been able to see a bunch of my friends and peers and people I normally would connect with throughout the year. Just not happening. And everything's happening virtually, and that has its own thing. I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit. But for some people, that's not their norm. For a lot of people, I would say even the large majority of people, they don't get to go to conferences all the time. They don't get to go to events where they get to meet people and kind of build friendships and peer relationships. And so this particular individual is currently like working on his resume and working on possibly finding a new position. And he's like, it all started with asking about the resume. That's where this all started. I'll ask about like, hey, can someone help look at my resume? And a few people jumped in and said, absolutely. And then someone jumped in and basically was like, I haven't had to use your resume for a while. So like, I'm not sure I can help all that much. You know what I'm saying? Because I haven't done it. And It's like, well, there's kind of a dichotomy there because your resume is usually the way you sell yourself, the way you represent yourself to a company is looking for a person. And it was really interesting because I realized that I probably haven't had to use a resume in a long time either because of the things that I do, the fact that I am out there, that people already know who I am. And it's usually through friendships, not because people know who I am because, look, I run a podcast. It's people know who I am because of people I've met through these events, and they either reach out to me or I reach out to them. And there's a personal connection, right, that I already have before it happens. And so like, I think the past 2 jobs, the resume I've submitted has been a formality. Like the resume doesn't come in until after it's already, I won't say necessarily decided, but it's like, okay, yeah, we definitely want to talk to you. But you're gonna have to go fill out this application, and that's where the resume gets put in. And it's kind of like, like they already know they want to talk to you before it is because I have an established reputation. So how does a person earlier in their career do 2 things, right? And this is what I really want to talk on for a while. Like, how do they build their resume, right? So when you start your resume, it's kind of hard to fill a page. You do a few things, you have a individual responsibility, but then how do you build that personal network? And especially within the context of either COVID, where we can't get out to these events, or if you don't have the same privilege that some of us do, right? Of getting out to these events and getting to meet people and interact with them in person. How do you do that? So Tony, I've talked a lot, kind of like setting the groundwork for the conversation. I'm kind of curious, like, what are your thoughts? Where do you start from a baseline perspective?
Well, I kind of just want to bring up 2 points. I do want to talk about the important things to include in a resume and some of the things that I think matter. But also, giving someone your resume when you apply for a job, like, where does that come from? Like that has come from like years and years and years of how people did business, and they did business in that manner because there wasn't social media. Social media didn't exist, 20 years ago, and so people didn't have an online presence. People didn't have, code that you can go reference or public materials that people could examine. You had what was on your sheet. And that's what you walked into a company with, to the hiring department. And I just think maybe now it's a different time. It's a different age where I have more content out there in social media land, whether it's technical blogs or just fun stuff, than the amount of stuff that I can put on a resume. And I think sort of holistically, it all builds a picture of who I am. So I think the resume is still important, but less impactful, definitely. And I'm just wondering, like, do we have a duty as people seeking employment? Do we have a duty of building a social media presence? Is that the expectation, or is that just a nice to have? Because it certainly can help build your brand, and that's kind of what we want to talk about. But is it mandatory? Is that the expectation from employers now? I know, for example, when we hire people who code, or developers, like, hey, I need to see your GitHub, is like one of the first things, we want to ask for. Maybe it's not the most important thing, but it is definitely something. We want to see your code. We want to see what you've done, because I think that's the expectation, because once you come to work here, you're going to be working on our projects in GitHub and probably some of your own as well, for study, for advancement. And what if there's someone out there who just says, like, no, I don't do social media. I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Twitter, and I don't want to be. Do they have less of a chance of getting hired when they walk in with a piece of paper only? Maybe. It's a different time now.
Yeah, I think I would I wouldn't necessarily say social media. So I differentiate a public body of work and social media. Those are two separate things to me. Social media is about personal interaction, is about building relationship. At least that's the ideal. I don't know that it's always that way, or I know that it's not always that way, but that's the ideal. The ideal is that in a social media capacity is you're building relationship. You're having regular conversation with people. And so in this, I would have communities like we've built with Network Collective, where in Slack, like there's a lot of learning and a lot of technical that goes on, but a lot of it's about relationship and just having peers and being able to bounce things off of people. So you have that social component, but then you also have the body of work. So you brought up something like GitHub, or I would put like a blog in this category, very much almost like unidirectional type stuff. Now, GitHub is obviously a functional tool, but it's also a unidirectional advertisement of your work. So if it's in GitHub and it's public, someone can look at it and make a decision about whether or not you're really competent in this thing that you're doing without ever interacting with you. And I would say the same is true for a blog, or, if you're going to put together videos or whatever. Both of them are tools. I wouldn't say either of them is required. I would say that, but you might be the disadvantage to somebody who does that. I mean, like there's something about expertise that I've kind of been just chewing on for a long time. And it doesn't, I'm not even saying you have to be considered an expert for this to be relevant, but there's something about expertise. We tend to believe that people who've written the sources are the experts. So the more that you plug yourself in to being one of the sources, the more it just gives you an aura of being an expert, whether you are or you aren't. It's not
some sort of social credibility.
Yeah, it's a credibility because of the fact that you were willing to put it out there. And the reality is that you may be at the same level as 100 other candidates, but you're the one who put it out there and was able to demonstrate it. And I think that carries quite a bit of weight. And so when you talk about how do I get a leg up, this is one way to get a leg up. It's hard. It's risky. You're putting yourself out there. It's uncomfortable. Oftentimes, like you're working in an area where a lot of other people have already worked. And so like I've heard this often is like, and I fought through this myself. In fact, we just released a video today on imposter syndrome, where I think it was brought up the idea that this has already been worked on before. So why do I need to, like, what am I going to add to the conversation? And that's a real, I mean, that's not, a lot of people just dismiss that, but that's a real thought. There's real value in that thought, actually. You know what I'm saying? Like, who wants just another person regurgitating, regurgitating something on a blog? It doesn't really add help. But in the context of demonstrating your skills, it actually does help. Even if 100 other people have written about it, you writing about it, if someone goes to look you up, all of a sudden they see that, hey, this person does know, I don't know, the ins and outs of configuring OSPF, or whatever, like the idea is it's there, and it's something that is, it's kind of a living resume for you. So I think that the answer the question you asked is it required? And there was kind of a sub question there is, are you at a disadvantage if you don't? I would say it's not required. There's lots of ways to demonstrate technical capacity. And not every job has to be obtained through relationship, but it's easier if you do have a living resume that's out there on the internet, and it's easier if you do have relationships. And so I would say that, is it required? No, but is it helpful? Absolutely. And just in my own story, it's been transformational. So like it talked about that idea that Jeff was a catalyst for me. I met Jeff at a Juniper training of all things. He's helping you with Juniper stuff.
Of course.
Yeah, a Juniper training of all things. Well, he wasn't at the time. But we both were getting into Juniper at the time. We both ended up at a training at the same time. And we both just happened to be assigned to be lab partners. And
the same pod.
Same pod, that's right. And not to pat myself on the back, Jeff was definitely way ahead of me at the time. Probably still way ahead of me just in general from a learning perspective, but he was way ahead of me at the time. But if there was a second person in the class, it was me. And so the two of us would like go through, and there was a lot of people who were very not hands-on, people I don't even know what they were doing in that class to begin with. We'd go through and finish our lab, and then we'd step outside and talk. And he's like, dude, you need to get on Twitter. And I'm like, why do I need to get on Twitter? Like, I don't see any value in telling somebody like, what sandwich I ate for lunch. Like, cause that was the idea I had of what Twitter was.
Right.
And he's like, no, I follow all these great networking people. And so I did. I went on and I went to the list of people that he followed, and I followed a bunch of them and started talking with them on and off. And then I went to my first Cisco Live, and I had just some baseline relationships. And with those baseline relationships, like, oh, that's who you are. It's nice to meet you. Mm-hmm. And then it starts, and then you go back and it's like, oh, it's good to see you again. Like, let's go grab a coffee, or let's go grab a bite to eat. And now, like, I have lifelong friends that have developed out of that. And those lifelong friends, you know, like, I don't look at them this way, but they're assets in my career. Like, whether it's in a specific problem that I have friends who are deep into wireless, who are excellent at wireless. I dabble, but I'm not that deep. So if I'm out of my depth and I need to answer for something, I can go Google, and I'm going to do that first. But if I can't find my answer, I'm going to call my buddy. I'm going to be like, dude, lead me in the right direction. Like point me in the right direction here, because I'm not finding anything. Right. And I've had the same happen for me, which is cool. But on the other end, my job that I'm in now was a referral. It was somebody who knew me, who reached out to me because there was an opening on and they knew that I would be good at it. And so it's like, you know, like, so they're assets, they become assets, and it becomes an important thing. And that's kind of why I think that, you know, like, I would recommend to anybody to at least, the least amount of investment is the social side. Like, and you don't have to be super active. You don't have to be like prolific on it, but start building relationships with people that you respect and see where it goes, because it's not going to hurt. It doesn't have to be that. But I think the real value is in doing something that demonstrates your competence. Write a white paper, write a blog, write something, do something, right, that shows that you have something out there.
Yeah. So actually, I want to comment on a couple of those things. When you mentioned Jeff, you know, encouraged you to get on Twitter, and then once you finally made it to Cisco Live, you know, that you guys had followers, or you were following people that you were meeting, and you have that commonality. And at all the Cisco Lives that I've been to, I have been someone who has approached someone else and said, I follow you, you know.
That's how we met.
And it's
in
like,
person.
Yeah, it's like, you know, at Cisco Live, when you say it in the tense of Twitter, it's not creepy to say, like, I'm following you. But like, that's how you introduce yourself to people. I follow you. I'm at Show IP Interface Brief. Yeah. You know, I remember I did that. I don't know why I always pick on Nick Russo. Maybe it's just because, like, he's an absolute mystery to me. But that's how I introduced myself to him at Cisco Live. I said, I follow you on Twitter. I said, you always put out great content. You know, this was many years ago. And he looked at me and he's like, Amish Tony? I don't know if you remember, but I had those big bushy sideburns and a straw hat. Yeah. And he was like, Amish Tony, right. And I'll never forget that. But also, I've also been on the receiving end of that, where I've walked around Cisco Live and people have come up to me and said, hey, I follow you on Twitter. I really like the content that you're sharing, whether it's a blog or a video or just sharing part of my personal life. And it's helped to sort of grow that community. So I guess there's a lot to this, actually. There's many facets to this, how to build your resume and also build your brand and grow your community. And what I would say is there's not one single silver bullet answer to this problem. There's not a way to do the perfect resume, and there's not a perfect way to do social media so that you'll get the job or you'll be on top. Instead, it's really a delicate balance. It's a balance of building a community of assets around you. And Jordan, that's what you just emphasized in so many ways. Building that community of assets around you that can help support you and that you can help support. That's super important. Contributing back to that community. Now, you mentioned white papers. If white papers is your way, if videos is your way, if doing a podcast is your way, or if just putting a blog that gets one watcher a month, putting something out there is contributing. You're putting it out there. That's important. And also balancing that with a well-made resume. You can't show up with something that was printed from Notepad and have a killer social media and an awesome blog and think that those two things are going to compensate for that crappy resume. It's a delicate balance, and all of these things need to work together. And that's going to help get you hired or get you promoted, or by comparison of two candidates that maybe have the same credentials on paper, you know, maybe this guy has done more in the community, is more plugged into the community, knows what's going on. That has value. That has real value. And unfortunately, there are different, I shouldn't say unfortunately, let me back up. Not unfortunately, fortunately, there are many different kinds of people in the world. There's a whole spectrum of people in this world. Some are very outgoing and some are very introverted. Okay. And most of the time, those more outgoing people are the ones who are going to be out in the community, whether it's blogs, videos, podcasts, papers, or just hanging out at a networking meetup somewhere. Okay. It's going to be those extroverts that are out there. The introverts are going to be the ones staying in who maybe are scared to put their stuff out there, don't want to be on camera, don't like the sound of their voice, don't think they have anything of value to add to create a blog or something. And because of that, they might be getting overlooked. And so what I'm saying is you have to have a balance of these things in today's world. Okay, if we were talking about the 80s or 90s, I mean, I wasn't in networking back then. But again, there wasn't social media and there wasn't this networking community. It was your resume. It was a piece of paper. So yeah, two candidates could be compared on paper as being equal, and maybe one would get selected over the other. But now there's more to it than that. So you have to have a balance. So if you don't have a community of assets around you, if you don't have forward-facing content, GitHub, blog, recordings, anything like that, then you have to have a killer resume to compensate for those things. Because when they're comparing candidates, and I think that they do, I think businesses take some of this into account. I really don't think they care about how many followers you have or anything like that, but it's the value of the content you put out there. And how well do you know the content that you're putting out there? If it's technical, I should say, if it's technical content. Public speaking is a big one. You know, I think we talked about this before. You can't put great communication on your resume and have a ton of videos where you're just stumbling over yourself trying to get a point across. Like these things conflict. So, you know, they need to support each other. Whatever you have on paper should be reflected in your videos, your podcasts, your writings, and vice versa. Whatever you're putting out there, maybe can support what you have on paper. And I just go back to balance. It's all about balance. There's no silver bullet here.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think that, you know, the obvious question and challenge that comes up when you say, you know, have a killer resume is, what if you've had one job and your one job is working as, you know, jack of all trades? And networking, like, obviously this is a networking, you know, leaning show because of our topic focus here. But, you know, like, say you've done everything, because that's where I started. I worked in that shop where I did everything. And there was a realization that if I really wanted to advance my career, it's going to have to, like, narrow it down. Like, that whole jack of all trades role only works to a certain degree. And then you have to specialize, and then eventually you have to go the opposite direction and know everything again and become a full stack engineer. But that's a whole other topic. I think I got some ideas for that. I mean, I did exactly that. That was my process. I was doing what I call help desk and field technician for a small MSP that focused on small healthcare offices, dental offices, doctor offices, and a couple of one-off realty firms and lawyers' offices. But we had probably 200 of the local dentists and doctors' offices, and we had to be the jack of all trades. And even though my title there was network engineer, one day I will tell you guys the story about how I interviewed there. It's absolutely hilarious. Some of my close friends know it. But they gave me the title of network engineer, and when they did, once they actually hired me, the lead guy there just kind of looked at me straight in the eyes and just said, you know, we're not a Cisco shop. We don't really do any networking here. And I was just so antsy to get my foot in the door getting hired that I took the job because, frankly, I needed the job. But also I was just so, I'll do whatever. I'll install RAM in boxes all day. I don't care. I'll do whatever. And I started out that job doing help desk, answering tickets, answering phones, and being a field tech. When servers needed more RAM, when a new switch needed to be installed, these were unmanaged HP switches. We were running sonic walls at the boundary. So really not heavy networking stuff. And I really wanted to transition into networking. And all I had at the time was CCNA. I actually got my CCNA before I got my first tech job.
because I didn't come from a tech background. So I needed some credentials to get my foot in the door. Once I worked there, I didn't see a piece of Cisco gear. I didn't touch a piece of Cisco gear. It wasn't a thing. But I continued my studies and I pushed forward through the CCNP while working at that job. I worked there for a year and a half. The CCNP was 3 tests at the time. I finished 2 of them before leaving that job. And what I put on my resume for my next job was only about like 5 bullets worth of stuff that I've done that was translatable to my next job. I did basic routing, Windows networking, Active Directory stuff, DHCP servers, DNS servers, very, very basic stuff, maybe entry level, maybe associate level stuff that I was doing. But I didn't have the credentials that puts me in the professional level that I was going to at my next job. So how did I fatten out my resume? Well, I didn't just put those 5 bullet points on my resume. I was also an active member of the local hackerspace, which is a cool little personal in-person tech community that's not far from here. It's in a little warehouse and in an industrial place. Got big roll-up doors, and there's tons of computer gear and networking gear and all kinds of cool people doing really awesome projects with all kinds of stuff. I built a bunch of MAME arcades, and people are doing like ham radio stuff. There's a lot of cool tech going on there. So I got into that, just being part of that and exposed to that. I also went to the local community college. There was a cybersecurity club there. I'm just a security guy that does networking. That's all I am. So I like to hang out there. Because I was in the cybersecurity club, I got picked to be on some of the cyber defense competition teams for my community college. So I did a bunch of cybersecurity CTFs. So now all of a sudden my resume starts going boom, 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 right? So now I'm part of these CTFs. I work with the team. I'm the lead networking guy for the defense. I did the cybersecurity club. I've given presentations on IP tables. I've done presentations on subnetting. So now I got a resume that has real experience, real hands-on experience, things that I've done, things that you can verify.
But stuff that really didn't happen from your job. Stuff you went out and did. Yeah, you went out and did it.
I went out and did it. That's right. And I did that because I knew, well, for one, because I wanted to, because that's who I am. But also I knew that what I was doing at my job was not going to back me up as a network engineer moving forward.
Yep.
No one gave a crap that I was installing sonic walls, those little white sonic wall boxes. No way. No one cared. My current employer, who I still work for, did not care about that component. And so my point is like building your brand, sort of. How I even got the job that I have now, which is the one who I interviewed for when I told you I was writing this resume for, was from someone who already worked there, a girl who already worked there. And she was on my cyber competition team in the community college. And how she knew me was, hey, my company is looking for a Cisco guy. And I remember you were the Cisco guy in our cyber competition group. Would you want to submit your resume? So that was my brand. I didn't know I had a brand at the time. In fact, I didn't even consider it until we were kind of talking about themes for shows. But that's how I got that job, because when she thought networking and security, she thought of me. I had built myself into that corner, even though I was doing none of that at work. That's what I was doing. That's what I was teaching myself outside of work. And it was because of that, I was able to add to a resume. So again, there's a lot that you can put on a resume that is real, valid experience. Whether you're a professional working in the field now, or you're someone who's trying to get into networking or security, there's a lot of things you can do outside of work or before you get your first job that can show on a resume real, verifiable, valuable things that you've accomplished. If you have a GitHub, we mentioned GitHub, blogs, podcast videos, all that stuff. That's all fine and great. But also get out there and meet some people, because like you said, the people side of this, the networking community, they become your assets. That's how I got the job I'm in today. I still work for this company. It's more than 5 years. They're great people. I love being around there. And I got there because someone wanted to bring me there, who I met at community college, because she was my asset and I was her asset.
Right. So you said some interesting things in there that I want to call out as well. And that is the things that you were working on outside. Those that's what you wanted to be doing. That was the direction you were heading. There's a saying, I hate this saying, but I'm going to use it because I think it's a good corollary. And that is, dress for the job that you want, right? Like if you want to impress somebody, dress. I think that's crazy because I don't like the idea that your dress is going to somehow dictate whether or not you're good at a particular job. I understand the merit. Let's not have an argument about that. I'm looking at you people who are on the YouTube chat right now. I see the.
I'm not even in the YouTube chat.
But
I'm not even in YouTube.
When you're looking for stuff to do, that's what I'll call extracurricular work. Whether that's writing a blog, or again, if you're doing a podcast, or if you're going to write something and just for the purposes of writing it or to get the experience, start working in the direction that you want to be going. So I think about like what did I do? A lot of the things that I looked at were things that were emerging, things that nobody was experts in, except for the people who made it. I was there it is, the first one. I knew it'd be Donald Sharp. I'm gonna try. I knew. I just absolutely do. Gnomes dress for the job that they want. Apparently they do, because I've never seen a gnome that hasn't dressed like a gnome. Just saying. But the idea of if you get in to something that's maybe just emerging, maybe something that's bleeding edge, maybe something you wouldn't necessarily be doing at work, and you can get some experience. It doesn't have to be deep experience, but the idea is do some investigation, some studying, write some things about it, write about your opinion about it, get it out there. Maybe write some code if it's something that can have some code around it. Maybe write a little tool to do something with it to demonstrate your capacity around it. Somebody will find that useful. It will show initiative, and it's also going to put you, with good visibility into the things that you want to do. And so I think that a lot of it too is it's not just aimlessly going after, just writing something technical. It's about like, where do I want to be and how do I start getting myself there even if my work isn't doing it? Like, how do I start demonstrating that competence? And I think that's important. You also mentioned, the idea of like getting involved with clubs, and everything you mentioned was a technical club, and there's a ton of merit in that. But I'd also recommend there's a lot of value in the soft skills. We have a huge gap here. We have a lot of engineers who are very good at engineering who aren't very good at communication, who aren't very good at interpersonal relationships, that aren't good at managing, that aren't good at a lot of things. And that's okay, because their job is to be an engineer. Do you want to stand out? Be the person who can write a technical document on your team. You want to stand out? Be the person who can stand up and give a presentation and explain something technical in a way that both technical and non-technical people can understand it. Those skills go so far, and being able to demonstrate those skills. So great. Go hang out at the hackerspace and geek out and learn some stuff, and that's cool. Go do your CTFs. That's cool too. Maybe spend some time at like a Toastmasters or something, right? That helps you develop skills that make you a more complete employee. Because when you go in and you show that goes a long way as well. And so I think that it's not just the technical stuff. It's also the continuing to advance your capabilities as it relates to the stuff that everybody has to deal with in jobs. But even more importantly, there's something about being able to communicate technology. There's a huge gap here. And I will say that I've built my career on the back of this skill. And that is taking a technical concept and being able to explain it in a way that's understandable to the audience that I'm presenting it to. So I've obviously put in the time and learned the technical stuff, and that's great to have the technical chops. The real value that I've been able to extract from my career is to be able to communicate what that means and how to get buy-in, or how to get understanding, support, or how to actually communicate things out there so people understand. And like one of the most common things I hear is like, we sent out this notice and like nobody replied, and then we did the work and everyone was up in arms because no one knew what was going on. I sent the email. Like, just sending the email isn't enough. You have to know how to address that email to a crowd. Where does the important information go? How does that happen? Communication is just one of those skills that I think can set you apart. And so I think that even if you don't have a deep technical competency, if you can come in and say, I have some technical chops and I'm building those, but what I really bring to the table is this. and I can help you with this while I'm continue to build my technical chops, there's a lot of people who will listen to you because they've lived the pain of not having that on their team. And so I think that is that's another thing there, that's to focus not only on technical stuff.
No, I totally agree. And I'll just back this up with, in case anyone wants to pursue any of the examples that I've given, the hackerspace, the security clubs, the technical clubs at your community college or local groups. Those are all places where I've given presentations and places where also presentations were given to me. So you start to learn those people skills and those presentation skills there as well. It's not all just technical stuff, people just sitting around all clickety clacking on the keyboard. In fact, sometimes you would just go there and, people sometimes just sit around and drink beer and just talk war stories about what they did at work. Some of them working, some of them in college. But my point is there's a lot of people skills and soft skills to be learned at those clubs as well. In fact, just participating in a CTF as a team, the people that we put on the team are the ones who are the good communicators. Because when I need information about Linux machines, I need someone to explain it to me. When I need information from the Windows domain people, I need them to explain it to me because I'm the network guy. I'm the firewall guy. So I need information, and I don't need someone who doesn't know how to communicate that well. So yeah. I think there's a fair amount of people skills that comes out of just being social and physically social with people. You start to read that body language, you start to read the eye contact, and you just learn how to present data. I have given presentations, not because I felt like an expert, but because I knew it scared me. And I like doing the things I'm scared of. And that's why I still do them. I gave a presentation today at work. It went for 40 minutes. I got a standing ovation. No, I'm kidding. It was a virtual thing.
Standing ovation for work at home. I want to bring some comments in here. Going with the serious one first. I talked about sandwiches on Twitter and says you don't want everyone to know you had a cream cheese and pickle sandwich. But I like the second part in here, and this is Laz. On a serious note, first Cisco Live changed my life. It's funny. He says, at least according to my wife, who said I came back a changed man. It is quite impressive how much that conference, and it's not because it's Cisco. I think it's because of Cisco's size. The value I get out of something like a Cisco Live isn't the fact that it's Cisco, because the technical information is available before and after the conference, and the keynotes are what they are. They're good marketing, right? Like that's what they are. But they are the real value is the fact that you have anywhere between 25 and 30,000 other network engineers, people who are focused in this space, and there's just a sea of people that you can talk with and learn from, and it's just it's exhausting. You said something about extroverts tend to be on the public side. I am not an extrovert. And there's a lot of people who I know who aren't extroverts who just fake it because they see the value. I sit somewhere in the middle. I mean, like I'm not introverted to the point of, being crippled or anything like that, obviously. But the definition that's out there that I like, right, is an extrovert is someone who recharges by being around people, and introvert is someone who recharges about being by themselves. I'm definitely an introvert. My primary hobby is going out in the middle of the night and taking pictures of stars. Like that's not a group or social activity, right? Like that's something that you do on your own. To me, that's refreshing. And so going to something like Cisco Live is exhausting, but it's worth the effort because of things like that.
I would say on that note, on Laz's comment, I think when you're at work and you're in your daily life, you feel like sometimes a fish who's swimming upstream. It's really hard work to try and get ahead, and you work and work and work, and you make very little progress. It's just very hard. Networking shops are rough places. There's a lot going on now. But when you're at Cisco Live, finally, everyone is going with the current. You know what I mean? Like you can just stop swimming upstream. Now we're all swimming together. We're that giant school who's all going together. People you don't even know, people you do know. We're all in it. We're all going the same direction. I think that was so cool. Me being there for the first time, definitely. I just kind of realized like, oh crap, these are the people I was looking for. Yeah.
These are my people.
These are the people doing the things. Yeah. Yeah. And you feel that. I mean, so many people, have made the same comment. And definitely it's true. Definitely it's true.
So I'm picking on Laz some more here. Says you need to sell that jack of all trades as a positive versus a negative. Bring up how you pick things up quickly and how you can manage your own projects, which is 100% true. And I don't regret at all starting as a jack of all trades. In fact, I think that's been incredibly beneficial to me in my career for a couple of reasons. And some of them are here in the chat. So Laz, again, you can sell that to an employer. I'm a peg that can fit in any hole. And so there's value in that. Yes, I specialize in X, but I've done Windows administration. I've done desktop administration. Mm-hmm. If you need help, I've worked on databases. I can do some of that, I can help. I may not be the best person in the world to do those things, but man, if you need something and we're light, but there's a bunch of stuff over here, I can jump in and help. There's value in that for sure. And it's even beyond that. I mean, I think my sentiment kind of matches what Kevin has here. It says, I started as a jack of all trades IT guy, and that's broad spectrum of knowledge served me well in my career. I don't think it's about just being that peg that can fit in any hole, although that's valuable. I think that as a networker specifically, everything is impacted by the network. Absolutely everything. So unless it runs on a system all by itself and you just have somebody sitting at a keyboard doing something, the network is going to impact the performance of whatever that user is doing. And so having an understanding about how these systems work, how do application stacks talk to each other? We learn the OSI model, as flawed as it may be, for the purpose of being able to debug, not just because we're responsible to layer 4, but because we need to understand what happens above it, how things get encapsulated, decapsulated, how things actually traverse the network, what TCP/IP is doing, not just from the protocol perspective, but what is it doing? What's the effect on the traffic that's using it? And that's, I've seen in most shops, and it may not be this way everywhere, that the network team isn't called in right away, but when the problem isn't solvable, the network team gets involved. And I find that because the network team has to have their hands in so much and has to have such a fundamental understanding of what's going on, it's hard to be a good networker without understanding those other things. I think that in the case of networking, having the broad start is incredibly helpful. Not because I want to spend my time doing user administration, but because I understand the way that Active Directory talks to other, domain controllers in the forest and how all that works, that helps.
But I wonder if your perspective of being the jack of all trades, and because I share the same perspective, so I should say maybe ours, but our perspective of the jack of all trades is really beneficial. Is that beneficial just because we work in sort of an enterprise where the jack of all trades, where there's many different disciplines? And maybe I'll just ask this question, and if anyone's in the chat, put the feedback in there, but is the jack of all trades valuable in a service provider? Do we need someone who knows how to jump into Active Directory if they're dealing with MPLS traffic engineering all day? I'm just curious. Tell me I'm wrong. I don't know. But this is the optic that I'm looking.
There's been multiple times when I have been on the customer side working with someone in the service provider, and I wish that they had a broader understanding of IP reachability. Now, I think, again, the better engineers are there. But does it really help? Or is this an enterprise scope?
Our industry is so big, you can't be an expert at everything, and you can't know everything. You can know a little bit and specialize in one or two things. That's just the way it is. There's too much volume to consume within the scope of someone's career. Yes, Tony, it's super helpful. Well, if Kevin Myers said it, then damn it, it must be true. I for one am always the one who's preaching that I wish more networking folks, for example, I went to SharkFest from Wireshark this year. I wish more networking folks went to that. I wish it was mandatory. I wish every person before you got your CCIE, you had to go to SharkFest, because it starts to open up everything above layer 4. It really starts to break down. We've talked about this before. Why do we build networks? Do we build networks just so we can send layers 1 through 4 around? Because that's all that networkers seem to care about. No, right. We build networks because we want to carry users' data, because we want to connect users with resources, whatever they are, whatever that relationship looks like. A person is getting a resource from somewhere. That's why we do it. And those resources are exchanged, right, in layer 5 through 7. That's important to understanding how the networks that we build affect those layers of the OSI model. And in SharkFest, you start to, I mean, it was my first one. Definitely I'm going to go again because that's a very deep well of knowledge. And I'm still at the brim. I'm at the very top and I need to go much deeper. But it started to open up that window of like, there's a lot of stuff about TCP, just TCP, the sequence numbers, selective acknowledgements. Gosh, I'm blanking on it now because I got a live mic in front of me. But there's a ton of stuff about TCP that you would think a CCIE just knows, but very untrue. The stuff that I learned from there, I went back and talked with my other colleagues. They're like, oh, you know, they think I'm some sort of genius all of a sudden because I've learned a little bit about TCP. And I just think so many people sort of take that for granted that if you're an expert at something, you've learned that level. But anyhow, there's so much deeper understanding in the payloads of the packets, and I don't think people have that broad understanding at that level. You can be the jack of all trades and specialize in just maybe one or two things. But for networking people, I wish everyone would go and take, oh no, I forget his name. Take his class, his TCP fundamentals class. It's amazing. It's on YouTube. And he's got an awesome class on Pluralsight. Yeah. What the hell is his name? Let's move on. It'll come up to me. I'll interrupt you with his name when it pops in.
Fantastic. So, there was, well, first I'm enjoying I'm enjoying some of the comments. Dimitri Fogel brought up Cisco Live and going to a Greek restaurant, which is OPA. I completely know exactly what he's talking about. I've spent far too much time outside of OPA playing games and doing whatever in times at Cisco Live. It's such a good memory. So definitely know all about that.
So Dimitri is talking about Dimitri, myself, and a group of other folks, the Land Tamer. I don't know if you guys know Quentin, the Land Tamer.
Quentin, yep.
Yes, I love Dimitri. So we all had our final Cisco Live dinner together in 2018, and we went to OPA. It was absolutely one of the best places. Since then, I live in Maryland. But my company sometimes has remote contracts, and I was supporting a remote contract, OPA's in Florida, in Orlando, and our customer was down there. And so was Quentin, the Land Tamer. So every time I would go down there once a month, he and I would meet at OPA. We would have dinner. We would celebrate. It's like the last day awesome. Of Cisco Live. Like every month, we would do that every month. And it's just been an awesome way to sort of catch up with networking folks. And that is an awesome place to go. If you're ever in Orlando, go to OPA. Tell them Tony sent you.
And they won't know
they'll give you nothing.
Who Tony is. They'll give you nothing. No,
but funny enough, no kidding. Funny enough, Dimitri, myself, Land Tamer, Carlos, and a bunch of other folks, we all went there the last dinner at Cisco Live. And then one of the next times that Quentin and I went, which I'm telling you was 6 or 7 months later, a guy walked in. He was working there. He walked over to us. We were at a table, and he's looking at me, and he's like, and I kind of looked over at him, and I'm like, the hell is this guy looking at? And he walks a little bit closer, and he's like, I know you? And I'm like, no, we don't know each other. And he's like, no, you were in here. And I was like, yeah, I was in here 7 months ago. And he's like, no, it was like last month. And I'm like, no. Anyhow, I pulled out the picture of Dimitri and myself and everyone at Cisco Live. He was the guy taking the picture. He was the guy who took the picture. Because I showed him the picture and I was like, we were here 8 months ago. And he was like, I took this picture. So you make even lasting memories with the waiters.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. No, the last time I was at OPA, wow, it would have been not this last February, but the February before that. I took my daughter down to Orlando, and a special trip, just the two of us. And so it was the first time we did anything like that, just the two of us getting on a plane and going somewhere. And we were doing some of the parks, and we had a rainy day, and we decided that we were going to go to the movie theater. We went to the movie theater that's in that same complex as OPA, and it's just pouring rain. And of course, you got to park and walk in, and we're walking in. And I got all excited. My daughter's like, why are you excited? I'm like, it's Opa. And she's like, you're crazy. Because it's just not the shared experience. But yeah, it's been, I've same experience with a group of people there. And I think the reason why we all have the same shared experience is because when we do Cisco Live in Orlando, that's about the only place you can go, is that little complex with like 3 restaurants where all 27,000 people at the conference are trying to get seats at the same place. But that's
totally worth it. Totally worth it.
There's some Chris Greer. Is that the guy?
Chris Greer. Oh my gosh. How did I forget? Somebody shoot. No, don't shoot. Don't shoot. Mark Hayes wins the prize for that one. Wow. Yep. Yeah. Chris Greer. Chris Greer has an amazing TCP fundamentals and TCP essentials videos on YouTube. He's got a great YouTube channel. I think it's called the Packet Pioneer. And he's got a course on Pluralsight. I mean, it sounds like I'm plugging him, but the bottom line is, if you want to learn TCP, if you want to up your game as a network engineer, as a network architect, as a network operator, go take his TCP classes, do it on video, whatever means you have, and you will be better because of it. Every decision you make as a network engineer, operator, and architect, you will now be keeping TCP in your mind as something to be concerned about. And how is it going to look, and how is it going to operate, and what do we expect it to do? You know, sometimes I think we think, oh, these boxes, these routers and firewalls and IPSs, they just do stuff with the packets as it goes through them. You know, they know what to do. The router knows what to do. The switch knows what to do. But like, we should know what they're doing before they do it, right? Because we designed it, because we put them in there. So it's about sort of marrying that understanding of what's really going on the wire with what your devices are really doing. And I found it super enriching. I'm an absolute fan, not just of Chris Greer, but of the entire sort of, deep packet study. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. It makes sort of my CCIE, and not just my CCIE, I shouldn't say it like that. It makes all of the study that I've done for all of the certifications to get me where I am, like, totally worth it, to prepare me for that. Yeah, absolutely. It's totally cool. If anyone wants to talk like nerdy networking stuff, man, let's get some packet captures going, man. I'm in it. Definitely.
That's definitely true. I've seen you nerd out over packet captures before. It's kind of funny. So Tony, I think a little bit of inside baseball here for everybody's listening, but I'm going to call it complete audible. We just riffed an hour on personal brand. And
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's not a bad thing. So for everybody listening, our plan was for the second half of this show was to record an episode that we were just going to record it live. And some of this is experimentation, and some of it is just opportunity. There's a lot going on right now, and it was just not a lot of opportunity to record multiple times this week. So we're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But Tony, I'm calling audible. I think we just did it. I think that was the show. I think that's what I'm going to cut up and release this week because that was really good. I think that it was comprehensive. So we'll leave that to be, and that means that we have the rest of the time just to talk about whatever we want to. We don't have to do anything, and I'll just record a little intro over the top of that, explaining what the heck was going on, and we'll release that.
Yeah, very cool. No, I love it. Yeah, so don't forget, at some point tonight, we got to do trivia. I'm super excited about trivia, and I hope all of you are as well. Yeah. I don't know how many people are watching because I'm not tuned into YouTube. I'm on Twitter if anyone wants to tweet at me, show IP interface brief. That's the only way you're going to communicate with me. I have the Twitter board up right here.
That's it, just Twitter? Yeah, I've got everything else going on. I'm actually
I'm only on Twitter.
I'm not on YouTube right now. I'm actually on our website where it's embedded.
My computer's going to overheat if I open another tab, so nothing else is going on. Right.
That was part of our technical
platform right now.
Part of our technical troubleshooting was the fact that Tony had a fan going on, and it was causing a bit of interference with the mic, and so Tony is melting now.
Well, how about this? Let's do this. All right, you guys see this fan? I bought it off of Amazon. It was a couple of bucks. It's a USB powered fan. It wasn't expensive, only 2 speeds, 1 and 2 Roman numerals. And it was advertised as very quiet, moves good air, great desk fan for an office, blah, 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 blah. And the purpose I was buying it for was not to cool myself off, was to put something quiet and small that's not obtrusive, not obstructive, I should say, for my field of vision here for the monitors, and something that would cool the back of my computer down, because I do all of this. All the videos I've ever recorded, anything I've ever done is on a Surface Pro. I got a Surface Pro 5, and it does a great job. It's never really crapped out on me, but it does get pretty hot. And I just kind of worry about electronics and the kind of temperatures I can get, especially when we're doing sort of long form video. The back of this thing gets really hot. So I like to put a little fan back there. So if anyone has any silent fan recommendations, that something I can put on the desk and run, and it won't interfere with this podcast or the stream that we do, that would be beneficial, because this one produces a little bit of a hum and a little bit of a high pitched whine that we just can't eliminate in audio. And, you know, buying stuff off of Amazon, you know, you don't know what it's going to sound like. So if anyone's got great recommendations, send them my way. I'm a buyer.
You're a buyer.
Yeah.
You're a motivated customer. Whatever it is, it'll be bought. That's funny. So
also, as soon as I get my Juniper switches installed, which may or may not be this weekend, I will have a really awesome EX4300 up for sale. If anyone wants to work a little side deal with me, reach out to me on Twitter. We can make arrangements.
When did the Network Collective live stream become the classifieds? Oh man.
It's better than Craigslist, I think.
That's an awfully low bar.
So I tell you what. So I just got a tweet from Ben Gamble at BGP Speaker. If anyone's not following Ben, you should go follow him at BGP Speaker. Great guy. I was in a CCIE boot camp with him, and he got his CCIE before me. And I interviewed him on my YouTube channel, and it was a really good interview. In fact, I just got like another comment on that video that I did like 2 years ago, like this week. It was like really good video. I wish you would do more of these, interviewing CCIEs. Anyhow, he says, with your recent Juniper work, are you thinking about maybe you should make your Twitter handle show interface terse?
Oh, that was in our chats here. Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's a direct at to me on Twitter. It just came up on my page here. And so what I will say is, I got these two Juniper EX2300Cs, right?
Don't tell me.
The compact ones.
Don't tell me. I saw this.
Look at the big brains on Brad. All right. So I got these two Juniper EX2300Cs, the little compact ones, 12 port, 10 gig uplinks, passive cooled, no moving parts, absolutely silent, perfect for what I need in my basement. I would like to run virtual chassis on them, to use one of those 10 gig uplinks to actually do a virtual chassis so that the router engine treats the two switches like it's one switch. That is a licensed feature, and I don't have a license. If Juniper would grant me a license for these two switches, both of them, in perpetuity, I will change my Twitter handle to show interface terse.
Oh, now we're negotiating.
At Juniper.
So Laz says QVC comes to Network Collective. I think this is going to be way more lucrative than running a podcast. I think that if we play middleman on selling networking gear for labs. No.
Oh yeah, I got tons of stuff. Look at all this crap. So let me go over here. You want can anyone name this box? I got
5505.
Cisco AS5505. That's right.
That's right.
5505.
No support on that bad boy.
Right. No. All right, let me break out this old one. See if any. I'm going to hold this up and see if anybody can call it out in the chat. This is an old one. All right. Maybe it's hard to see because of the light. I'll try a couple of different precisions. Anyone know what that is? Try it over here. Anybody? Anything?
I'm looking. No.
So I can't do much about the way. I can't do much about the light. No, I realize the light sort of washes it out. All right, but what I'll do is I'll turn it around.
Make it. Make it larger.
Oh yeah. How about that? I'll do just one more time.
A PIX 501E.
Oh, that's pretty close, I think. Oh, that is. Oh, crap. There you go. Someone's a winner. That's a Pix 501E.
That's your buddy.
That's a,
hold
Chris
on,
Cummings.
There was
that Chris Cummings?
No. It was first one here. TCP dump 101.
Oh, okay. That's Grave, right? Grave Rose. Right.
So there you go.
Yeah. No, that's what that is. And then everyone should know the this bad boy right here. This is my first home router.
WRT54G.
That's right. You know, This baby's running the DDWRT. Yeah.
Nice.
And so here's something, right? Before I got into IT, I was a carpenter. I was a woodworker, and I was doing things like flashing routers, when I got home from cutting wood, you know what I mean? Just to kind of like put it bluntly. And so I always sort of had this passion for it, not just networking, but just sort of, cool, geeky tech projects that I would do at home. And I didn't know that there was a career, that I could make a career out of this. And so when I would say when the opportunity came, but it wasn't really an opportunity, when I had to change careers, I didn't even know, that we could make a living at this, So it's very cool. So now I was cleaning out my closet. As you guys know, I'm doing this home network makeover, replacing the Juniper switches and everything. So that was some of the old gear that I had collecting dust. Nice. And I had told Jordan this previously, but all that old gear and power boxes and all kinds of stuff I put in a trash bag, and I was going to go find an e-cycling center somewhere. And it was sitting in my garage for a couple of days. And then I would walk by it on my way to this little office that I'm in now, which is actually my workshop, my woodworking shop. I got clamps and stuff you guys can't see. And I reached back into that trash bag that was going to go to e-cycling and dug out those 3 items because they mean something to me. I don't know. There was some like TV show. I don't know if it was on Netflix or something, but there was this lady that was teaching people how to like organize their home. And she'd be like, hold the item. And if it brings you happiness, you get to keep it. And like, that was those things. I was holding like each one of those and like, yeah, that damn thing brings me happiness. Like I like having it. So I'm going to keep the damn thing. It's not going to the recycler.
Yeah. I don't think she would have agreed.
I just can't let them go.
I don't think she would have agreed. So there's 2 words for that. The first is nostalgia. You're nostalgic for those things, right? The second one is hoarder. That's the second word. Sorry, I shouldn't have done that while you were drinking.
No. And the last thing I will show you guys, some of you old guys might know it. This here. This is show the ends of it.
It's DCE, right? DCE, DTE.
Yeah, so this is an old DB60 serial cable.
Yeah.
This is a DCE to DTE. Yeah. Digital clock something, Terminator.
Simulate.
It was. But
TDM circuits.
When I was doing Packet Tracer in the Cisco Academy, we had to start out by connecting the serial interfaces, and you had to make sure the clocking end was on the right side. And I had come across this cable at a customer site and was like, oh crap, that's a real one. That's the real cable. And actually the ones that like we used when I was in Cisco Academy was the HD version of these. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Anyone out there in YouTube land? It was like the high density serial ports. So there was like 2 on a card, where this one was just 1 on a card. You just fit the 1. Yeah, so a little bit of networking history.
So, I mean, I have the same thing. I think probably a lot of people do, of the idea that there's a number of cables I just won't get rid of. Adapters I won't get rid of, even though like I really should go through them, because I'm sure at this point, like, I have adapters to things that I could never get running again, even if I wanted to. But I have a drawer, right, full of all of the cables and adapters that I just absolutely refuse to. And I've got another box, like a Tupperware box that's just in my closet that has them all in there, because I just can't get rid of cables. And yet every time I need a new cable for something, of which is all the time, I never have the right one. Even through all of that, I never seem to have the right cable where it needs to be. Okay. Kevin, if Tony is classified as a hoarder, then I've got the Warehouse 13 of network crap in my lab.
6509E, 7606. Wow. What is that? FTTH PON splitters? I don't know what that is.
Fiber to the home, optical networking gear.
Okay.
Yeah,
Man,
7606. That's just the space heater for the data center. That's the that's what you use to warm up. Oh man, bring back some. Whatever.
Yeah, I hope to make a little video of my little networking closet when I put the new switches in and when the cable management's done and everything, just to kind of show the transformation, because I haven't done this in a long time, but every time I see these people's pictures on Twitter, right, this is my optic of the world. So this is my only view. I see people posting these like pristine home labs, racks with little 6-inch cables, patch panels into the switch, everything's color coded and everything. And like, you open my closet and it is a wreck. Like, stuff will fall on you. Like, you will get assaulted if you open the closet too fast, and I'm just like, having a pristine lab is like, I don't know, it's prideful for some people. And I guess that's great, but like, it doesn't help you. I mean, I guess it's the same thing as like keeping a clean car. It doesn't make the car go any faster. It's just clean. It's nice to look at. And maybe that's the same sentiment, but I kind of feel like your home lab is like for function, not form. And so that's why it's just been absolute trash down there. And, and it's gotten me through so much. I've labbed so much stuff out of there. It's like it didn't even matter. So now I'm actually cleaning it up, right? Because I'm not doing a lot of labbing. I'm doing a lot of like, hey, let's actually make something out of this network I have here. And so I took a little video of opening the doors and all the wires dangling and how it was an absolute wreck. And then I'm going to take another video of the same thing when it's all cleaned up. And hopefully it will be absolutely silent.
You had me nervous there. We have technical problems. You can't mouth words and then have volume come out. Scares the crap out of me.
It makes Jordan's heart skip a beat if you start.
Yeah, that's no good.
I think I want to do trivia now if I can.
All right, we'll do trivia now.
Oh, you know what? Let me dial in to do my share screen. Okay, yep. So bear with me a moment. I'll get that up.
So while you're there, some big news came out, not necessarily networking related, but affects a lot of us. Slack got bought. Bought. Salesforce bought Slack. So like, I don't know. We run our whole community for Network Collective on Slack, and now I'm nervous. I'm looking at the how soon are they going to start taking away those free features, the ones that we use to stay in touch, and it's going to be interesting. All right, I see you coming in here, Tony. Let me do what I need to do to make this happen.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Time to roll to Discord, Mark says.
Yeah, I was just thinking like everyone is jumping to Discord, and soon Discord will be like Slack.
Yeah, I mean that's always the problem with these things, right?
They're ephemeral, they're dynamic. They live for a period of time. They change, they move, and you got to move with them. You can't be married to technology or companies and technology. It just doesn't work like that.
Telegram.
Okay. Telegram, I think, is like
that's what Laz says.
Is that like that secret messaging thing or encrypted messaging, right?
Are you sharing, Tony?
Not yet. Sorry.
Okay.
Let me do that right now. Yep. Let me see window or screen number 2, allow. All right. I should be sharing now.
All right. You ready for me to drop it up there?
Yeah, you can. I'm good with that. All right. So the answer to last week's trivia of our router porn, or guess this device, That is where I show you a device with its chassis opened, with its lids off, and you have to try and identify it either by circuitry or by form factor or by anything. This is just something fun that we do. We've done a couple of them so far. This was last week's, and we had a number of guesses, and a bunch of people guessed incorrectly. But for the people who guessed Cisco ASA 5545X or Cisco ASA 5555X,
what do you mean,
are
or?
the winners. And
How can it be or?
Well, it can be or because from this picture, you can't actually tell the difference between the two.
Okay.
So I'm going to say that if you've guessed one or the other, or both, because a lot of people guessed both. They say it's a 5545 or a 5555.
So now we have to go back and find
the winner.
Who guessed first.
I have that. I have that all laid out. Don't you worry your little head. I got it taken care of. But anyhow, I just wanted to kind of go. I just kind of wanted to go over that, which is here on the right side of the screen. I just did an image search for Cisco ASA 5555s, and just so you guys can see, this is the front of the unit right here. And so this metal box right here is this removable hard drives bay.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Here's your bay of 3 fans, and here's your grill. Okay. And then you see there's nothing there but just more airflow. And then on the back of the unit, for example, here's an example of the back. And you can see even here on this image, they label it 5545 and 5555. So there's really no difference from the outer part of the chassis. We got 2 power supplies. They're lined up right here. 4 rows of dual stack NICs. That's right here. Boom, 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 boom. And then there's your management port, your USB ports and console, and that's right there, and right there. Here's your I/O expansion that I've never once found a use for, but or maybe we just couldn't afford it. Or it's maybe because Cisco tried to sell us newer gear before we needed to upgrade anything. Anyhow, so that is it. So I have the winners here. Let me close this down.
The winner. What do you mean winners?
I'm going to do winners, and here's how I'm going to do it. Bear with me a moment.
Tony throws a curveball every single time of this. The first time we did this, he gave away a shirt. We didn't talk about that. So then we gave away a shirt, which is fine. And now we're picking multiple winners. Tony's just trying to drain my bank account. That's what he's doing.
So here's what we're going to do, okay? The very first one by timestamp of Twitter is my only way to validate this. On November the 24th at 11:22 p.m. was Chris Cummings, who also won last week's trivia. So congratulations, Chris. Congratulations, Chris. Everybody, a round of applause.
Wow, Chris.
I know he was quick on the draw.
I don't even know if he's
very
watching
quick on
tonight.
the draw with that. That's all right. I'll give him a shout out. Okay. And then I just kind of want to go because there were 2 other people.
Okay.
The second in line was Mainouche. I don't know if Mainouche is watching, but she had it pegged here as well. She called it a 5555X. And again, you couldn't really tell the difference. So that's a winner as well. And she guessed November 25th at 4:45 a.m. That's my time. So I don't know what time that was on her side of the earth. If she's around, give me a shout. What we want, and oh, I'm sorry. The last one was Fareed Fakour at CCIE pending. Thank you very much. November 25th at 10:23 a.m. He gave a second guess, and I'm going to let that fly. I'm going to let that fly.
Both of them are right. How could you not allow that?
Yeah.
It's not like you guessed wrong with one. Yeah, it's great.
So for these 3 folks, what I want to do is I'm going to reach out to each of you, even if you're not streaming, even if you're not watching. I'm going to reach out to each of you and see where you are on the world, and then see what I might be able to send you. So I'm not going to announce what a prize could be because I don't want to have to pay for like international shipping of T-shirts and things like that. I want to know where I'm sending it first. Most continental U.S. stuff is just fine. So I'll contact you. You let me know where you are, and we'll see what kind of prizes we can send out. We got some Network Collective swag that we have because we haven't gone to conferences lately. So this is a great opportunity for us to be able to award that to some very deserving folks. And if I can, I'd like to go ahead and do our next trivia, if I may.
Go for it.
All right, let me just pull this up here. Is this the one? All right, hang on here. I hope this is the one. No. That will be the following week's trivia. I don't know what I've done, but this is what it is here. And I'll tweet this out from the Network Collective link shortly. This is the box here.
A lot of capacitor.
So there you go. I'll tweet this out with the trivia, and anyone can win some Network Collective swag. Anyone can be a winner. You just have to reply back with what this answer is. Depending on how many answers we get, depends on what we can do for winners.
Just to be clear,
and you have to reply with the hashtag Network Collective, please.
It's got to be on Twitter. Don't post the answers here on YouTube. Got to go to Twitter. Got to post with Network Collective hashtag. That's where you enter. That's an interesting one, Tony. I'm looking at it. It looks like audio gear.
So this one is very cool because I actually have a full frontal view of this one, and it's so funny because Mike, I absolutely love my company. We're unlike any other company I've ever seen. We get to play with so much cool gear. And we get all this crazy gear that comes in. And so far, I've only done sort of Cisco gear, but we're going to start getting into some very different vendor gear here shortly. And it always makes people nervous when a new piece of gear comes in, and the first thing I'm doing is taking off the chassis and like opening it up. And they're like, "You're not supposed to do that. There's no serviceable parts in there." And I'm like, "The hell there isn't." I'm taking some pictures.
What are you doing? And I'm voiding the warranty. Yeah. What else?
So everyone gets a little nervous when I approach a switch with a screwdriver. But that's always the case.
Just look at the heat sinks.
All right. That's enough from all of you. No more peeky. You want to play? You'll be on Twitter tonight. I'll be sending that out after our stream. And I want to thank everyone who gave out the answers for who answered and played for last week's trivia. Very cool. And thank you everyone for guessing both models, because I would have felt bad had it been one or the other, and had to sort of nullify those answers.
Very nice. So Mark Hayes says he knows exactly what that is. Well, Mark, I hope you're heading over to Twitter to go post that right now, because I don't. I'm looking at that. Like, I am not that. I have not torn apart a bunch of stuff on the inside. I'm just amazed at the level of heat sink on that one. It looked like it might be a fanless, though. That's what I gleaned from that. I didn't see any fans, but I saw a whole lot of heat sinks.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, that's one of the things, why I open these boxes up, is just to see inside, I'm not an electrical engineer. I don't actually know what any of that equipment does. But I just want to be able to see inside of it and actually see, what makes this thing tick, what components in there, like the Cisco ASA. You see there's RAM sticks in there, serviceable RAM sticks. You can take them out. You can add new ones. Oh, my favorite thing, Jordan, can you pull my screen back up? I think I'm still sharing. Can you pull my screen back up?
Absolutely.
Oh, this is my favorite part of this one. This is one of the reasons why I did this one. All right. So this was last week's trivia. I just want to make that announcement so no one gets confused. This is why you open these things up. What I'm going to show you right now, and yes, I do realize on stream it's not going to come through very clearly, but if you happen to find your way with an ASA in your arms, do this. It's super cool. There are serviceable parts in here, like I just mentioned, the RAM sticks and other components as well. But what's very cool is this area right here. And anyone who's opened this up knows what I'm talking about. Let me zoom in. And I do realize that when I zoom in, it doesn't get very much clearer. It's still very pixelated. Even on my side, it is. Right here is a bank of dip switches. Hardware switches that activate or deactivate the interfaces. And right here are two dip switches that do the same thing for the management interface and the console interface. So if you want to mess with somebody, flip one of these dip switches and put the lid back on and give it to them and tell them, hey man, I don't understand why this interface isn't working. That's it. That's a fun project right there. So there are dip switches in there that actually control the hardware. And I mean, that's just one of the things you'll never know. It's not in any of the configuration guides. You'll never know it until you take the cover off.
Matt Elliott says, who are you calling a dip switch? You, Matt. That's who he's calling a dip switch.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons, why I have so much fun taking the covers off all this equipment, is you never know what you're going to find in there. And I think it's just very cool. It's just interesting to me. That's all.
All right, so this is my favorite comment so far. I know what I'm doing for April Fools next year. So I will tell you, the dip switch thing is mean. I have a great story though when it comes to mean pranks to play, and that is and this isn't my story. This was told to me by Marco, and I'm not even going to butcher or try to butcher his last name. Used to be a trainer at IP Expert, now works at Google doing all fun things like Google networking. And can't talk about what he does ever. And he told me an example. This is while I was studying for my CCIE. And he told me an example of a trick that I thought was just the most insidious trick possible. And it's using EEM. And so, with EEM, obviously it's, a lightweight scripting language on Cisco. You can do some things on there. And the script he told me about that someone had pulled, I think they pulled it on him, but I'm not sure. I thought it was pretty hilarious. Is they had an EEM script, and what this script would do is the script would turn off an interface. So it would cycle through every once in a while, and it would just turn off an interface, which is pretty straightforward, right? But that's really kind of hard to identify. And so, I'm sorry, it's pretty easy to identify, because if you go look at the configuration, like what's going on, you're going to see this EEM script that is showing what's going on. But one of the things you can do with EEM that's kind of tricky is you can intercept commands and replace them. And so, anytime someone ran a show run to try to investigate why that was going on, he would exclude the EEM section. So he'd intercept the command.
Pipe, exclude, EEM. Yeah, I was just thinking
so
that.
So when you do show run, you don't see it anywhere in the configuration. And I was just thinking about, like, how long would that take to figure out? This interface is just dropping. There's no explanation why. And then you go to do a show run just to kind of dig through the config to see if there's anything in there, and there's nothing. Right now, the answer to this is obviously, if you knew what the EEM script was called, that sounds like an INE CCIE-TS lab. It might have been at one point. It wasn't when I did the INE workbook, but it was particularly insidious. I thought that was pretty mean. So
I'll jump in and back up that comment. As you were saying that, I was picturing an INE troubleshooting lab. There is an INE troubleshooting lab that has a flapping interface, and you don't know why, and they have logging turned off and some other way to sort of hide it. So I forget what exactly the configuration on that box was, but yeah, it was an EEM script that was bouncing an interface like every minute. It would bounce it. Uh-huh. And then so you'd see all the routing protocols churn, as there was redistribution, so how those labs go, and everything just churns and keeps churning once every minute. And like, you make a change over here and stuff is churning over there, and you're like, what's going on? It's a whole like psych you out.
oh crap. I've got to go to Buffer. I created, so have you guys ever used, I don't know what the way you pronounce it. Is it Zapier or Zapier? You guys know what I'm talking about?
Zapier, I say.
Yeah, so it's like if this then that, but more robust. So I use that a lot on the back end for automating stuff. So like when I schedule the show, I pull up, or I have we use Doodle to organize it. Once we commit to a date, that goes and fills in all the pertinent information into a spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet, I just have to say, that's this type of show. And then it kicks off an automation, which generates a calendar invite. It schedules the tool we use to record typically, just using a bunch of automation to try to save myself some time. And I created a new one when we posted, because we've obviously just started these live streams, just started posting videos. And I'm like, oh man, like I've got to get these videos out to social media so people know that they exist. So And I also wanted to post it in our Slack. And like, so there's a lot that goes on when one of these videos hits our YouTube channel. It turns out when I do a live stream, it also does it. So I just tweeted out about this live stream, but I have a bunch of stuff in the buffer that will just hit at different times depending on what's relevant. So I got to go in and clear that out now because clearly I screwed that up. Oh, man. I'm doing that now.
The joys of running a forward-facing podcast with automated advertisements.
This is the automation. The automation is only as smart as the person who builds it. And so this is me, taking automation and having it to not work. So
that's so funny. You remember we were talking about yesterday about this YouTube video I found, and about this guy talking about automation abstracting away the problem is also abstracting away the solution, and visibility, and it's just kind of like that whole thing, like here we put something in motion, and something that we never thought would happen happened.
So Preston came on. Preston, where did you find out? Throw it in chat. Did you find this out from my errant tweet that just went out, or did you see it in the Slack? I'm curious where you found out where this was going on, because it just so happened that my tweet went out while we were doing this. It just so happened that one of my buffer times is during the live stream, so we actually were here. It would have been catastrophic if it went out like tomorrow morning and I didn't see it for a few hours. And a bunch of people were jumping on the live stream for no reason.
Wait, so you just tweeted? In fact, I don't think
my personal account. Yeah.
Okay. Let me just see, because I don't have that up in front of me.
And the only reason why I know that is because my tweet showed up in the social media app here, because I used the Network Collective hashtag. I didn't tweet that.
I see here, yeah.
What the heck?
That one from three minutes ago? New Network Collective video.
Yeah.
Network Collective live stream.
Oh, that's funny.
Fantastic.
Hey,
that's great.
And Chris has joined us. Chris, did you just join us? And I
Chris Cummings?
Chris Cummings. I don't know if you heard the good news yet.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
welcome to the party.
So
in
Chris,
fact, he's our honored guest.
Yeah, Chris is the winner of last week's, and also the winner of this week's. So
That's
Chris,
right.
congratulations.
He's like that guy who won Jeopardy twice. Congratulations, Chris.
You're not getting another shirt, Chris. I'm just letting you know now.
Yeah, we'll have to think of some other swag to give you.
Chris is going to end up with a closet of our stuff. Yeah. So I mean,
Jordan, does your wife knit or cross stitch or anything? Maybe we could send Chris something with love from the Martins.
We've got some swag we can send. Get him a mug. He says. So yeah, the automation thing. So that's actually what we were going to record on tonight, right? Like our plan was we were going to do a show, and I kind of had a tongue-in-cheek question, and I guess I'll start it here. We'll spend a little bit of time, probably not as long as we did chatting ahead of the show about this, but I think it's a good topic. And the tongue-in-cheek question was this, and that is something like DevNet in Ultimate, is it good? Is it good for the industry? And I don't ask this question because I think DevNet is bad for the industry. What I do ask, and the reason why I do ask, is because there's always a risk when a single vendor is the primary voice in a trend for the industry. It's not always bad. Sometimes a vendor can drive things forward. But I thought it would be interesting to kind of explore, like, do we think that Cisco taking a primary role in driving automation? And so when I say that, like, there's always been an undercurrent of automation, but it really feels like since they've introduced their DevNet, a program from education perspective, and then DevNet from a certification perspective, that it feels like the conversation has changed. I see a ton of people going after those certifications, and I see a ton of people like studying for this type of stuff. And, obviously some of the people that are in our community building content for this. And I've seen less talk about automation in general. I feel like there's a lot more talk about DevNet and less talk about automation and orchestration. And so I don't know. I'm kind of curious. So Tony, I don't know if you have an opinion to kind of get us started, and then I can add my thoughts to it as well. But I'm just throwing the question out there, and again, not leading, just kind of curious what your take is.
Yeah, I thought about this, and I think it's good. I do think it's good. Okay. I can't predict the future. And here's the thing is, we don't actually know if this is good or not, because this is so new. It's a new program. It's a new certification. It's a new learning path that Cisco has developed. It hadn't stood the test of time, doesn't have a track record yet. It's still very new. So we don't actually know what the outcome's going to be. We can only make predictions. I would say what the good that has come out of it, absolutely, is that it is exposing programming fundamentals, scripting fundamentals, and computer science fundamentals to people who wouldn't otherwise be exposed to it. That wasn't always something that was taught in the networking field. You were able to sort of skirt by a lot of that learning, myself included, right? I didn't go to a traditional college. I went to a community college for a very short period of time and went directly into IT and networking. I didn't go through the computer science path. So I personally lack those fundamentals. And I think this approach is introducing that to people, those fundamentals, introducing that to people who were going down the networking path, who found Cisco, and are using that to sort of build their future, to line everything up. Tony, you can't predict the future, but we can't expect you to predict it. Tell us what will happen. Tell us. But what I would say is it has great value in teaching people those fundamentals. Not everyone is going to come out of this learning path or the certification program and all of a sudden go back to their work or their job or their university and start solving all of these networking problems with all of this newfound knowledge and tooling that they have experience with now. No, it's not going to do that. Most people are going to file it away as another certification earned. Some people are going to take a couple of the points and a couple of the tricks and things that they've learned, and it's going to carry with them, like most things that we learn do, that it's going to live with us forever, but not everything will. I think the hope here is that exposure to this program is going to maybe inspire one or two people and light that spark. Maybe people who were going down the networking track and got introduced to DevNet because their work says, hey, I really want you to start focusing on this DevNet thing. It's getting really hot and we want to start introducing automation in our workflow. Why don't you go get certified in it? And maybe that's something that person didn't consider, but because they got the little push and they started doing it, they realized like, holy crap, I really like this. In fact, I like this a little bit more than sitting at a console or driving a web GUI for devices. I really want to do this. And it's those people that I think are going to go on to really do something great and actually solve real networking problems with the skills that they've learned and go on to evolve that beyond what it is today. I don't think we know what the future holds for it, but it's offering an exposure to people who didn't have it before, and I think that's always for the good. Now, on the backside of that, I'm fearful because with this coding and automation comes automation. And through automation, sometimes comes abstraction. And we were talking about this as well. So my fear is that in a few years, as more and more people pack this on, that's going to be their primary focus of study and not the networking fundamentals. And while some of these things that they're programming and coding and automating is abstracting away from the devices themselves, so that when there's a problem, that problem is abstracted away too, and you don't know the solution. The solution is back on the device. And you need someone to go in there and do that. You need someone that knows that. I hope that there's always going to be a solid balance in the curriculums of really awesome networking fundamentals as the industry continues to grow, and automation and coding, and that it doesn't become more focused one way. Because it certainly seems, if we just look at everything that's on Twitter for this past year, there are more people going for DevNet certifications than I think any of the other Cisco certifications available.
Yeah, so I want to dive into some of the things you said there, and so, But I'm going to start back with my general opinion, like my answer to this question. DevNet as a means for, promoting and encouraging automation and orchestration in our networks, it's a good thing. DevNet, and as a way of educating people about how to go about doing it right now, is a good thing. I think the curriculum and the people that are involved are good from what I've seen. They seem to be very interested in not just making it, here's Cisco's orchestration tool du jour, but really teaching you the core components of what it takes to automate a network and teaching you the key things you have to know. And so I think they're doing a great job on that currently. I'm afraid what that means going forward, because I've seen this in Cisco's education programs a lot. You get a good team that has a great vision, that develops a great product when it comes to an education portfolio. And then those people lose control over it because it becomes the avenue for additional marketing specifically towards Cisco products. And so with the hype and the fervor I see around DevNet, I've just it raises a red flag for me, because when we've seen this argument about the CCIE, I think there's some justification and there's some not for making it, a Cisco CLI type, certification. I think you learned a lot of fundamentals in the CCIE that are incredibly transferable. I think some of the blueprint, and even more now than when I took it, is focused on Cisco only technologies, which it's their certification. They can do whatever they want with it. But ultimately, when it is the gold standard of expert level networking certifications, and it starts veering away from the fundamentals and dealing with vendor specific stuff, it starts losing some of the varnish. It starts wearing off, right? Like it's not as good as the gold standard any longer, when all of a sudden it's a means to get people locked into a program of a single vendor's initiatives. And so there's always this tug and pull between, I think, well-intentioned individuals who are trying to put the educational program together with the needs of the business that pays them. And we see that it's not very common to find economic viability in a certification program unless it drives business. And that's my biggest concern around DevNet is that it's pushing people, and not yet, but that it might, that if Cisco's track record continues, the marketing people aren't going to be able to keep their hands off of it. You know what I'm saying? Like they're just not going to be able to do it. And the other business units wanting to drive business into their business units aren't going to be able to keep their hands off of it. And so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because I hope it stays the way that it is. So I think that there's overall some good. Now, your comments on abstraction, I think, are key. I've said this a lot, so I'm sorry for those who are hearing me say it again. But abstraction is a good thing usually. And when we talk about abstraction really only delivers its core value when the thing that's becoming abstracted is something that is predictable. It runs the same way every time. It's repeatable, and it really doesn't break. So where do we see this in the real world? We see this in programming languages. This is always the example that gets thrown out when someone pushes back on abstraction and says something like, you need to understand the core fundamentals. Someone will say, well, you don't have people out there, or there's not a whole lot of people out there that are coding in assembly, because we've abstracted away from that level. You don't need to be at that level anymore. We don't need to be that restricted anymore. You can think about the problem at a higher level, and by doing so, you can solve more problems. And that's a very valid argument. There's very few people that need to be coding at that low level of a language. And the reason why, though, is because our processor architectures are solid. They do exactly the same thing every time. And so abstracting it away so that you're not dealing with the processor and the resources directly is something you can do, because you know what's going to happen. You can build routines that predictably do the same thing every time. And I don't feel like we're there in networking yet. Now, does that mean that we don't do abstraction? No, that's not what it means. But what it means is exactly what you said, Tony, is that we need to still maintain those fundamental skills, because there will be a day when your abstraction or your orchestration breaks. And if you don't have the fundamental skills, if you don't understand how it works under the hood, if you don't have a good understanding, you're fully dependent upon your vendor. And let me ask you, I'll just ask everybody, what's your confidence in your vendor support right now? If something fundamentally breaks and breaks the way your network runs, and your only hope is to call them to figure it out, are you hopeful that that gets resolved quickly? And I would say the very large majority of people would say no, that they're not there yet. And so I still see it, rather than being the norm, rather than being what everybody should be doing. Automation, orchestration, these things are tools, just like every other tool we have in the toolbox. What we are supposed to be doing is solving problems. And automation and orchestration can help us do that. They can help us do that. And it might be in a vendor-specific way. It might be by using an orchestrated platform that's something like SD-WAN, where the automation and orchestration is all under the hood and I'm not actually doing it. I'm just directing the orchestrator to tell it what I want it to do. Or it might be something through a platform like Ansible, right? We have all of these tools, all of these things that are available to us to help solve problems. And I don't know that that's what the message from Cisco is. Now, I haven't taken the courses, and I still feel like they are teaching the fundamentals based off of what I'm hearing is in the blueprint. So I don't fully know, and I will absolutely admit that as I'm sitting here talking about it. But I do feel like I hear a lot about, well, how do I hit the API for product sets? How do I hit the API for DNA Center? How do I hit the API for vManage? How do I use Ansible to manage those tools? And again, we're teaching an ecosystem. We're not teaching tools to solve problems. We're not teaching you like, this is where this fits. We're teaching, how do you do it the way that we're prescribing? And so I don't know. And so that's my concern. And so like, I asked the question, not because I think that they're doing anything wrong. I asked the question because I can see a future in which they do, if they don't say the course that they're on now. And again, I do hear them teaching the fundamentals now. I do hear that, you're learning coding, you're learning, you're learning how to interact with APIs. Now, of course, they're going to use theirs, and that's fine, so long as that's just the mechanism to learn. But it's really learning how to interact with them. And so that being agnostic towards the product is really what it comes to be. And I think that Cisco's has a mixed message here, or not a mixed message, but a mixed history here. The CCNA, my experience, like CCNA level stuff at Cisco has been predominantly vendor marketing, like the technical stuff, not necessarily the route switch. I felt like there was a lot of subnetting, which is a good fundamental skill. But like when you get into the different tracks, if you're talking wireless, if you're talking whatever, like it's almost like a product exam. Design, I felt was that CCDA was one of the worst tests I've ever taken when I took it. Maybe it got better over time. I don't know. But CCDA was one of the worst tests. CCDP was a better test. It was less about, the parts and pieces that Cisco sells and more about design, which is good. And CCDE is an excellent test, right? I haven't taken the CCDE. Well, I've taken the written, but I haven't taken the actual practical. But the people I've taken it who have explained what is on it sounds like a fantastic test, right? And so like I feel like as I've gone through, they've done a good job at the expert levels of keeping them agnostic. And at the lower levels, they haven't. Right now, it sounds like the entire program is that, but I don't know. And so I'm like, I would put it in the, like, if I put on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd put it at like an 8 or 9 right now, because it's nice to have the 800-pound gorilla in the industry finally talking about the thing that we all know that we need, because it's going to drive what we need in the industry to happen. And that is to have it be everything is API first. Every product, everything that released, like you have to have an API. The API has to be manageable, and we need the vendors consuming their own dog food here, Like you can't offer me a GUI that does more than the API. Your GUI better consume your API. Your CLI better consume your API so that when I consume your API, I can do all the same stuff in it, right? And that's what we're seeing. And I think that Cisco driving that is a great thing because it's going to force everybody else to do it if they aren't doing it already. And so I think that's a great push. It's great to have Cisco in there. I'm concerned about releasing the responsibility for the curriculum of training to one company. Because I felt like we had a lot of good independent stuff. I mean, Networks of Code, who does a lot of work with us, I mean, they develop training for a lot of other people. And I know they've done work on the DevNet program, like of helping develop some of that stuff. And that's all great. But I felt like they were like this great resource. And I hear less and less about them and their training and their capabilities and more about Cisco. And it might just be because Cisco is a huge marketing machine. Maybe that's why I'm hearing it. But I deal with a lot of people who are pro Cisco, a lot of people who are anti Cisco, a lot of people who sit in between. And I definitely feel like there's been a shift.
So my thoughts and my fears stem from, like I said, I hope that they still maintain a balance. And the reason I focus on that statement and I bring it up is because if you remember, if any, I mean, I hope everyone can remember, but like when you were going for your CCNA, you only had enough time to study for your CCNA. And once you got past your CCNA, you realized like, oh crap, those are really just the fundamentals. Like that was the basics. And all you had was enough time to learn the basics. And I think for people that are now adding on the DevNet components or the DevNet equivalents, they have to take time away from the CCNA. There's only so much time in the day. There's only so much effort someone can dedicate to these things. So if they want to learn the coding and automation and scripting, then they have to take time away from some of those fundamentals in some way to be able to make enough time for one program to be able to teach both. Otherwise, you learn one and not the other. And that's really just my fear. I mean, you just don't have enough time to learn both at the same time, especially at the CCNA level. I remember it took me 3 hours of labbing, couple nights a week, to get through that CCNA. I didn't have a networking background, so I was going from zero to hero. This was it. I had to make it happen. There was no extra time to learn coding as well. You know what I mean? There's two different things. And so that's why I'm just worried that some people are going to take an unbalanced approach to it and still find themselves in the networking field. Expected to know protocols and things at the level that we think someone should, but really they know Python and Ansible, at an operator level. It's just a fear of mine. That's all. I'm not saying that's how it has gone. I'm just worried that's what's going to happen as we continue to see more and more folks move towards this. How many people are just completely abandoning CCNA and the traditional networking route and are just doing the DevNet approach and just like, you know what, I'm just going to do this coding thing, and they still walk out and apply for a network engineering job. And they're like, oh, I don't know, what LSAs are, but I can write some Python. It's different. It's different. I'm fearful for that. Maybe it's just because of my background and my professional experience. Being in different organizations that have an operations floor, and you see like the unexperienced people making changes on boxes they don't understand what the real impact is. And I'm just worried about that as it grows and we start introducing automation into that. The same thing. You're writing a script, you're writing something that is making changes on boxes. You really don't understand the impact of the network. Maybe it's not their responsibility. Maybe someone more senior should be making those changes. I don't know, but organizations, operate how they do.
As they do.
I live in fear. That's all it is.
Fear is one thing. So
I'm like from Wayne's World. I feel like Garth. Like we fear change. Sometimes I feel like I want to embrace what's new, and I think learning coding is very cool. It's something I was never exposed to. I said that many times. So I can't wait to get those fundamentals. But I'm just worried about the people just doing that and not coming from a different background. So we fear change. It's tough for me.
this sparks some opinions, and I do want to get to them here with some of the people here. So Laz chimed in. So Cisco's really pushed the network programmability since 2015. So the point that people thought that they would need to be developers to be in the network space. No wonder we're seeing this take off. And I would say yes and no to this. So Laz, I mean, I know what you're talking about. I think we saw this with the introduction of ACI. There was a big push with, like we want to manage our networks programmatically. And just to be, somewhat blunt about it, I think that ACI was developed around the idea of you managing it programmatically. I think that it's easier to manage it programmatically than it is to manage it through the interface that's provided as part of the tool. And so I think that that was somewhat validating the design decisions they'd made around ACI. But also there was a big conversation around the same time when OpenFlow and even OpenStack and some of the other OpenStack not being a networking thing, but OpenStack, I remember specifically there's some people in that community who pushed this, the idea that the CCIE was dead, that fundamentals were dead, that you would never have to do networking again because the cloud was just going to eat it all, was kind of when this message started emerging. And so I think that was good marketing. I didn't believe it at the time. I still don't believe it now. I think that ultimately they weren't talking to you. I think they were talking to the executives, and they were saying, hey, you buy our stuff and things will be easier and you don't need those expensive networking people anymore. We've learned that lesson since, that it's a hybrid. Now, when we talk about any type of, fill in the blank ops, dev ops, net dev ops, sec dev, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. You still need the fundamental skills there. And it's a partnership. It's emerging between the people who do operations and the people who do development to make that happen. And so I think that's there. My comment about vendor support got a lot of things that I won't put on the stream.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes. I mean, a lot of support for the program itself. I think that agreeing some with what we're saying, they're very much teaching the fundamentals. How do I hit the API for multi-vendor compatibility? That's a loaded one. Last thing here, that they have been agnostic. But every example is against Cisco product, which I don't mind. Like, I don't mind that Cisco is the target because they're Cisco. But at the same time, learning automation by learning only NSO is probably not a good way to learn automation, right? NSO is a fantastic tool, but it's not the only way to do automation, right? And so bringing that in as a component's okay. Let's see, what else do we got in here? Compelling streaming as I'm reading people's comments, but they were coming in so fast that our stuff was going on. So more stuff I can't post. What happens when the API interface fails? Well, then you're out of luck, Preston. That's the patent answers. Microservices and dynamic services allocation. But I'm not going to sit here and spew marketing terms at you.
So I just want to jump in with two things, Jordan. When you just said microservices, I spoke to you earlier in the week about this YouTube video I watched. It was this really awesome presentation by Brian Cantrell at the 2017 GoToCon developers conference, and he was talking about debugging, and I'll put the link out from my account here shortly. He was talking to a bunch of software developers, right? It's a software development conference. But I watched his talk, and it was speaking on so many parallels to networking. It was unbelievable. I just watched it, and like if you just did like a find and replace for just a few words in his talk, it was like he was giving a networking talk. I thought it was really amazing. One of them was microservices yield simpler components but more complicated systems. Just absolutely true. Just a fact there. And I think a lot of times we think about, building these microservices in these sort of micro networks, these little things that can be isolated if something happens. containers and Kubernetes. If you say Kubernetes 3 times, one of my coworkers pops up behind you. You don't know that. But builds complicated systems. All of these components need to talk to each other, and the same can be said for networking. As we get all of these new tools, they're very cool components, but together they make a much more complicated system than I think traditionally what we think of networks. And the other one was he talked about something called the curse of the intermediate skier. And he said, you are more likely to die as an intermediate skier on a mountain than you are a beginner or an expert. He said, because the beginner is going to go so slow, they're not going to hurt anybody. And if they hit a tree, they're not going to kill themselves. The expert knows what they're doing and is not going to hit the tree. But the intermediate skier has this confidence that they can go faster. But then when they hit the tree, they can actually kill themselves. And he says, so how this translates to what we do is automation gives us the confidence to do incredible things, but humans still are stuck in the loop of things. And devices and things can fail in ways we understand and in ways we don't understand. And that's why, I kind of go back to the fundamentals. So I'm going to put that video out. I recommend everyone on your lunch break, spend the 55 minutes or so, watch this guy's talk. It is absolutely fantastic. This guy is like he's like doing stand-up in a developers conference. Really cool, really entertaining to watch.
So I would add to that, and I think that along those same lines, Russ, part of Network Collective, when he was here, he talks a lot about state optimization surface. It's a kind of like a triad of components when you're building a system. And so you said when you build microservices, yes, each individual component is less complicated, but now you've introduced a new complication. It's really in the interaction surface between them. And then the state sharing between them becomes a lot harder. And so like there's a triangle, it's hard to demonstrate. And, state optimization and surface, like the ideal system is going to sit somewhere in the middle, or at least if you're building for a very generic design. But the idea is as you shift more or away from any one of those, it puts extra pressure on the ones you're shifting towards. Meaning that as we, as we remove optimization, because optimization is this idea of like everything all in one box is the most optimal. I don't have to go across the network. I don't have to do anything. The most optimal system is one where the interaction surface is as minimal as possible, right? As I remove that optimization, I increase interaction surfaces. And then as I do that, state also gets affected because now it has to be distributed across. And so there's a short take that's out there. If you go search the Network Collective website for state optimization surface, you'll find it. It's a video, so Russ steps through it all. It's all really good. Recommend watching that one as well. So some funny comments. The cloud, this has always kind of been my argument. The cloud will take over. Okay, but how do we get to the cloud? And then the replies are right on. With money. With lots of money and money, the new network. And I'm like, yes. That's pretty much what it is. So let's see. And this is a good point too, right? To be honest, the cloud made it so a random dev can spin up a whole application without knowing any networking at all works. And that's true. The cloud has tried to push networking underneath. It's tried to abstract networking. The idea is I can just spin up this thing, and we've seen a lot of, we've seen a lot of rogue IT infrastructure get built, servers and systems and whatever in the cloud without any real consideration for the network. What I'm finding in my job, because this is what I do now, is there are a lot of companies who allowed that to happen. That whole rogue under the covers IT went out and just went into their own thing. They're finding it really hard to manage compliance, to make sure that the security policies are applying to them consistently, whether the application or the system or whatever workload it is lives on-prem or is in the cloud. And so we're seeing networking becoming more of a first-class citizen. It's a slow process, and it's an uphill battle because one of the big values of public cloud was the idea that we didn't have to get those slow, curmudgeonly network people involved. Part of that problem is ours collectively, because you can't just say no. You've got to find answers and solutions. And I've seen it time and time again where the answer was just no. And so they just went and they did it themselves. They being the devs, they being the systems people, just went and built it themselves and said, forget you. And so there's some of that's on us, but I think that also now as it's becoming more robust, we're needing the same tools in the cloud that we have on-prem, and the cloud providers aren't providing them. And so we're seeing more opportunity there. And we're seeing third parties come in and provide overlays over the cloud that give you that kind of functionality because of this, to reclaim. And there's kind of like 3 pillars of people that would use a product like this. This is one of those pillars, reclaiming ownership of the connectivity between your in cloud resources and your on-prem resources. And so I mean, it's a really interesting conversation when it comes to this whole, rogue application stuff you could spin up. And it's really great if you're building something temporarily, but we know how that stuff works. The temporary stuff becomes permanent, and then all of a sudden you're stuck figuring out how to make it do all the stuff that needs to be done. Let's see.
Yeah, I use a phrase which is permanently temporary.
Permanently temporary. Well, you can just add. I mean, if you want one of those, I have one of those like text expander applications that I use to I can type a shortcut and it will write a whole email for me type thing. And one of those I think you could put in there is anytime you write temporary, just add at the end in parentheses permanent, really permanent or whatever. Let's see. Didn't the cloud just go down because they couldn't scale? Something like that. Clouds down, can't vacuum. Yeah, I saw that story too.
So that link that talk that I was just mentioning, I shared the link on Twitter from my account, and I recommend everyone go check it out. It's on YouTube. Brian Cantrell, but he worked for Joyent, cloud provider, and it's about when their whole data center went down, like the whole thing went dark. And that's what it is. It's him telling the story of that. And it's just really super entertaining. And I think it directly applies to networking as we know it today. And you just replace the words debugging in his talk with troubleshooting, network troubleshooting. And it's a networking talk.
Great comment from Preston here, RFC 1925. I saw someone hating on RFC 1925 recently. It made me scratch my head a little bit. I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but man, it comes around pretty relevant a lot of times. Rule 12 and protocol design perfection has been reached, not when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. I think that's important. Here's an extension off of what I was saying. If the business is building rogue shadow IT infrastructure, implies there's a failing in the IT part, not being able to deliver what the business needs. That's kind of what I was saying. The networkers getting in the way, so they went and they did what they needed to do. Ultimately, we're all there to solve problems for the business. And if somebody needs to do something, no is the last course answer, right? Let's see. Kevin Myers, if every desk in a corporate headquarters doesn't have a switch from Best Buy hidden underneath it, what are you even doing? Oh, and Preston is making me cringe a little bit. If the flat network is full, make the bigger flat network.
That's a good one.
Yeah. All right. Tony, I think this is probably a good place. We're past 10 o'clock. We've been doing this for a couple hours, completely changed directions, and still managed to have a great time talking about lots of networking stuff.
Yeah, this has been awesome.
Yeah, so
it really has.
So to close it out, I don't think we've got a ton of people watching, but for those who are, I mean, there's lots of people chatting, which is kind of cool. A lot of them connected with Network Collective already, but if you haven't, and if you aren't, if you just happen to stumble across what we're doing, head on over to networkcollective.com. Lots of podcast episodes there. You go check them out. And also you can find where to subscribe and all that other stuff. I think I'm preaching to the choir here, though, so I think most people watching now are people who are already engaged. This was a blast, as always. I really enjoyed doing this. We're definitely going to keep doing it. I mean, we're doing it weekly now. I don't know if we'll continue weekly. I mean, we'll see. We're going to keep pushing through. We'll see through the holiday season. We're not making any commitments. When we started this, that's kind of one of the things I wanted to do, because I'm pretty rigid about the podcast schedule. Like, it comes out on a particular cadence. I think it's important. And on this, I think being regular is important, but I also think that, Like, I just want to be able to spin it up and do it when I want to. And then if things get hectic, it'd be nice just to take a couple weeks off. So I think we're just going to do it. But for those, there was some people who came in late, didn't realize that we were doing, this, the goal, the target. So long as holidays don't get in the way, which is going to be a little hokey for the next few weeks. But generally is that we're doing this on Wednesday nights. And so Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, that's going to be the so if you want to, sketch it in, pencil it into your notebook, check to see if we're doing it, that's when we're here. Kevin Myers, stop scheduling cutovers for Wednesday nights. Just that night of the week is booked. You got something going on. Oh boy, the chat went into zero tier and now I'm concerned. Every time Network Collective starts talking about zero tier, it starts sounding like a cult. But anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm going to see if maybe next week, let's see, what is today? The 2nd, maybe the 9th next week. Let's see if I can get my home networking project behind me. And then I can show you, my cool little zero tier, project. It's not a project, but it's just a fun little thing that I have going on. And, I keep very hush hush on it. Very hush hush.
All right. Wait, zero tier isn't a cult. Anyway,
but I already got the
tattoo. So we'll have guests sometimes we won't. Sometimes it'll just be Tony and I. And we have the capability to have call-in people. So, if some of you have a lot to say, I might just tap you on the shoulder and be like, dude, get on. We brought Donald Sharp on that way just to test it out the first time around. But yeah, we definitely have that capability. It's not a cult. It's an organization that promotes love, and this is it. Love and routing. Preston says love and routing. All right.
Love and routing.
Well, guys, it's been a blast.
Everyone, thank you very much.
Yeah, and we'll be on again next Wednesday. So trivia, get out. You're going to tweet from the Network Collective account. You're going to post that picture.
I'm going to tweet out our picture from the Network Collective account. So all replies will be valid after that goes out in about 5 or 10 minutes. And we'll announce winners next week. And I will reach out to our winners from this week directly to figure out how we can exchange some cool Network Collective swag. So Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Yep.
And then, so next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, we definitely will be here for that one. Might have a guest, we might not. We'll see how that goes. And we'll have a new slate of topics of things to talk about and more goofing around and having fun. So appreciate it. Have a good night, everyone. And we'll see you next time.